Hello everyone and welcome to the cabin at Frog Hollow. Today's pattern that we're going to tie is called the Roberts Yellow Drake. Family history here. Clarence Roberts was my uncle, and this is arguably the second most famous dry fly in Michigan. Been around a long time. So today, in order to put things in perspective here, this was traditionally tied with a Mustad 94840, the dry fly hook of the century. I'm using a Tiemco 101, and with 8/aught thread, we're going to dress the hook. To dress the hook, bring the thread over the hook, and we're going to wrap consecutive wraps back on this tag that's in my left hand until we reach back here at the bend of the hook, directly opposite the barb on the bottom, and we're going to snip the excess out. A lot of dry flies, parachutes included, started with the parachute post first. However, Uncle Clarence didn't do that. He started at the bend of the hook with the tailing material, so that's exactly what we're going to do. The tailing materials was a cock pheasant, central feather of the tail of the cock pheasant, so we're going to pull a few of those out, a few meaning, 4, 5, or 6, depending on the size of the fly. There was never 3 or 4, and that was the recipe. It was always, the bigger the fly, the more barbels from this that was used. So we're going to measure this, the length of the shank, or slightly longer. You can see that's just slightly longer than the hook shank, and that's going to be our tie-in point. So we're going to tie that in right on top of the hook, one loose to hold it in place, and then a couple strong wraps, and our tail is tied in. We just want to make sure that it looks pretty good. So we're going to now take and Palmer wrap the thread with the butts of this material up to where that parachute post is going to tie in later. So we're going to stop right there. That's the point. And we're going to snip those threads out. Next is the deer body hair. This is from a white-tailed deer. This is the clump I've been working on. As you can see, I've snipped out kind of concentric clumps there. So I'm going to snip out a fairly nice batch of this. A nice batch means, that varies with the size of the fly, but maybe the size of a pencil, a pretty good batch. I'm going to use my little comb here to comb out any of the fine down that's in this deer hair. And we're going to see what those tips look like. We're going to stack these. I'm going to get my hair stacker, drop them in the hair stacker, give a couple taps. I'm pretty sure these guys didn't do this. They just selected the hair that was right. But wow, that looks a lot better. A little too much. I can feel in my hand that this is going to be a little bit too much. So I'm just going to pluck out some of those hair follicles, and we're going to measure here. We want these to be just into the tail material like that. We want the tail to actually be longer than this hair that I'm going to tie in. So we are right there right now. So what we're going to do is transfer that to our left hand, and we're going to snip this out. And we're going to tie that in. Let's take a look. We're going to go around it twice so it doesn't get away from us. And we're going to pull straight down. Now let's take a look. Is it too long? Nah, I don't think so. I think it's going to be pretty close. It might be a little too long. So let's unwrap and snip off 1/8 of an inch. You can do this. Not a problem. We want to get the proportions right, so we'll go back around twice, straight down. Now, one thing you want to do here is push on this deer hair so it goes all the way around the hook. And I'm just going to rotate that now so that you can see that that deer hair has rotated around the hook, because we want to cover that hook shank on the bottom. So we're going to secure that really well right there. Now we're going to do the Roberts wrap, I call it. Loose, but not too loose. And we're wrapping down that body with concentric wraps. We get right at our tie-in point of the tailing materials, and we're going to tighten up to flare that deer hair back there. See how that deer hair flared? Now we're going to come back and cross those wraps concentrically, coming back up the body. Notice how we've got a nice tapered body. There's deer hair that went all the way around the hook, no hook showing, and we're just going to snip any butts that are kind of ragtag, if you will. I'll use that technical term, ragtag. And we are now ready to tie in our parachute post. All of the Roberts drakes, yellow drakes, I should preface, because there's another fly called the Roberts drake, was done parachute style. Parachute was of deer body hair, deer body belly hair, I should say, because that's white. And so we're going to snip out a section of that, a much smaller section than we did for the body. Again, we want to comb out that down. See that down that comes out of there? Isn't that cool? And this we're definitely going to stack. So we're going to snip these butts off so it doesn't get hung up in the stacker. Slide them in the stacker. Give a few taps so that we get the tips of those all nice and even like that as they come out of the stacker. And this post, we want this post to be the length of the body, which is where we're at. You can tie this in, quite honestly, this can be tied in this way or the opposite way. We're going to tie it in this way. I'm pretty sure that's how Uncle Clarence did it, but you know, I can't remember. I was there, but you know how you are when you're 10 or 11 years old. You're just not paying attention like you should. So now we're going to snip all of these butts out, which is really easy to do when they're nice and long like this. You don't have to, well, is that one? Or it looks about right. Now we're going to tip this post forward. This is where we're going to tell the tail right here. Looks about right. Might be just a tad long, but I'm going to leave it. I like it. And what we have to do now is post this. So we're going to wrap around these hair follicles, and we're going to wrap up to make a place to tie in our hackle. So here we go. We're making, and you're going to see this on the camera here in a second, where I've wrapped up these hair follicles to make this place for the hackle to wind back down, is the whole idea. Now we're going to bring the thread back down to the base, and we're going to show you what this looks like. So you can see now I've got, oh, I don't know, maybe a 1/16 of an inch. I'm going to get that little butt out of the way. And now we're going to tie in our hackle to be wound around that post. I'm going to add, let me clean this up just a touch. I wouldn't want to be accused of tying a shabby Roberts yellow drake, God forbid. I'm going to add a touch of flexible, clear flexible adhesive right here. Bingo. That'll help my hackle stem that I've stripped so that I can wrap up before any of the barbels start to flare. So that gets tied in right at the base of this parachute. Right there. I don't want to trap any of those hair follicles. Oops, that doesn't look very good. There we go. Now I've got it. I want to leave the thread right at the base of the parachute post because that's where we're going to tie it off at. So next we're going to Palmer wrap this hackle up the post with the bare stem till we get to the top. Right there, we're at the top. A couple wraps is all it takes. Now we're going to start wrapping back down, and you'll see the hackle barbels start to flare as I'm wrapping back down that post. Just keep coming, one right after the other, one right after the other, and we're going to do one more. Beautiful. Bring our thread in behind. Remember, we're right at the base. We're going to pick those hackle barbels up, trap that hackle stem, 2 or 3 wraps. Now we can snip it out. Let me get a clear look at my snip spot here so I don't cut the thread. Hackle is gone. We're going to finish the fly by cleaning this up. Clarence cleaned this up with thread, so when you look at the bottom, you don't see any hair follicles. All you see is the yellow thread. So we're just going to clean that up a little bit. And now we're going to whip finish. I'm pretty sure those guys did half hitches because this whip finish tool, I don't think was around back then. There was another one, a kind of a spring-loaded job that everybody used, or they just hand whipped, or they did half hitches with the tip of a ballpoint pen. Snip the thread out. We're going to stand that post up. Now our head cement hasn't dried yet, so we can manipulate that post to get it standing just exactly like we want it. And that is the quintessential Roberts Yellow Drake.